Ginsburg croaks and the left gets froggy, thinking they've stacked the deck, they've made their threats. But come November, will the dirty Democrats be packing the court or packing their bags?
Every time who I am, well, how damn, I'm a man. 6 shooters in both my hands. I'm a cold-blooded brother, a real bad mother. Watch out, honey, here I am.
I think my favorite thing about the Democrats is that they never seem to learn their lesson. They pull every single dirty trick in the book, and then the moment the Republicans do anything that gets the best of them, they scream foul, and then they just go back to pulling more dirty tricks. But America sees through them now. The era of Donald Trump has absolutely exposed them for the grifting, dirty dealing bastards that they are. Let's just go through the Trump presidency here. So, it started out with Russian collusion. Turned out that was a big hoax, and while it had a lot of people hooked for a couple years thinking that it was real, it also opened up a lot of cracks where people started seeing that they were absolutely lying, especially when you had Adam Schiff going on CNN every day claiming that they had absolute proof, and then the Mueller report comes out and it's a big nothing burger. They lose support. Then they go and jump straight from that lily pad to impeachment for Ukraine, and nobody really understood what the hell Donald Trump was getting impeached for. Hell, I understand politics quite well, and I don't know what he got impeached for. They claimed that he made a quid pro quo, so what did Donald Trump do? He released the transcripts, no quid pro quo. But then there was ample video evidence of Joe Biden giving a quid pro quo to the very same people that they bragging about giving a quid pro quo, firing the investigator that was looking into Burisma, which had his son on the board. Again, people lost support over, or the Democrats lost support from the people over the Ukrainian impeachment. Then COVID came, and it was all the Democrat areas that wanted to lock the country down, shut down businesses, and it was a dirty trick to try to sink the economy because they knew that if Trump was running on a great economy, he would surely win. So their thought was, well, we'll just shut the country down, ruin the economy for Trump, and we won't really worry about the millions upon millions of people who are out of work and can no longer put food on their table. Well, lost support. Then, once COVID was starting to run a little dry, they decided to spark some riots. Now, I personally believe that the Democrats, or Democrat-connected people, were aligned with organizers of these riots. They happened too spontaneous and were too organized right away not to have been previously planned. And it took months and months and months. It wasn't until the riots grew out of the Democrats' control that they finally, after 3-4 months, came out and started condemning them. But instead, they called them peaceful protesters day in, day out, when all of America could sit there and see anything but peaceful. And it's just hilarious because every time they pull these dirty tricks, they reveal themselves more and more. And not only that, they pulled a dirty trick in 2013 when they got rid of the filibuster and cut the judicial nominee process down, the confirmation process, from a supermajority requiring 60 votes to a simple majority requiring just 51 votes. And Mitch McConnell told them, you guys are going to regret this and sooner than you think. But they were losing on an issue. They wanted to pass 3 D.C. District Court judges. And so what did they do? They changed the rules. They played dirty. They said, well, if I can't win, then I'm changing the rules. That's Democrats. But America can now see them. It's the emperor has no clothes. We now see exactly what they are now. And every single step of the way, they keep doing these dirty deeds, playing these dirty tricks, losing support, and again, they are back at it with the new Supreme Court justice appointee. And it has come out that, before we get into the rest of this, Trump has now set a time for the Supreme Court announcement. So President Trump reportedly will announce his nominee to replace Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg at 5 p.m. Eastern Time Saturday. Trump had already announced that he wanted the funeral proceedings for Ginsburg to conclude in Washington, D.C. before he made the announcement. The time of the announcement was confirmed by a reporter for Bloomberg. Now, do you think that, if it was a conservative judge that had died, do you really think that the Democrats would have waited? No, because people on the right actually have a degree of decorum. We are not this all for power all the time. We'll do anything to get it, anything to hold on to it, and we don't care what destruction we leave in our wake. That is not Republicans. That is Democrats. They are all about that. And we're seeing now that let me go back to this article. Senate Democrats warn GOP of plans to retaliate if McConnell advances Trump court pick. Now, it is entirely within the rights of Donald Trump to nominate a new judiciary to fill what once was Ruth Bader Ginsburg's seat. And because there is the power with both the presidency and the Senate has every right to confirm her. And they're I guess it is going to be a her, because we're thinking it's going to be Amy Coney Barrett. But you can never hedge your bets with Donald Trump because he's always full of surprises. But we've always kind of thought that Amy Coney Barrett was next in line, and since they are replacing a woman, it is likely that they are going to replace her with a woman. And I think Amy Coney Barrett's going to be a good pick. My one big question mark is that she does seem to follow the ideas of stare decisis, which to me is not a good move, because what we want are Supreme Court justices that are willing to overturn all of the unconstitutional edicts of the liberal activist judges that the Democrats have been placing on the Supreme Court for a while now. And what's interesting is that really, it used to be that Supreme Court justices were almost unanimously passed all the time. It was kind of a deference to the will of the people that if you nominate somebody, they vote on it, and it's the will of the people. The people voted that president, and they have the rights, and so the Senate would just confirm it. But all that changed, and the big thing was 1974, Roe versus Wade. And I'm not even talking about this from an abortion standpoint. This comes down to a judicial issue, because what they did with Roe versus Wade was they circumvented the legislature and let the judiciary overstep their constitutional boundaries and create a constitutional law from the bench, bypassing the amendment procedures that should have been necessary through the legislature. And ever since then, the Democrats have been absolutely rabid about what the makeup of the court is, all to defend Roe versus Wade, all to defend the right to murder over 1 million babies a year. And they want to make Republicans out to be the bad guys. But that's when the judiciary became this political. It was Roe versus Wade. Because what it also means is that once they realized that they could do that, they realized that if the judiciary was always on their side, always in their favor, that they could create other laws from the books, laws that decrease our Second Amendment rights, for one. So to them, this is an absolute power. It's an absolute positioning of power issue for them. Because if they control the Supreme Court, they control the means to bypass the legislature. That is what it's become for them. And so that's why I think we need to undo Roe versus Wade, and we need to pack the court, or not pack the court. That's what they're talking about, packing the court. Actually, you know what? Let me get into this for a minute. Let me get into this before I keep going on, because I did want to make a point about that. So Democrats have been discussing their options with senators, vowing a furious fight to keep the seat vacant until next year when a Senate convenes and when Joe Biden may occupy the White House. And while no specific course of action was detailed, Democrats said they were united on this. They plan to engage in an all-out battle to stop the nomination in its tracks by pressuring 4 Republicans to break ranks. Well, hate to break it to you, Democrats, but we only had 3 that were vulnerable. Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and Mitt Romney. Now, Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, because they are 2 of the most worthless senators, or Republicans in the Senate, they have already said that they will side with the Democrats on this. That takes us down to 52. But the other big squish, Mitt Romney, has said that he is in favor of voting. Now, my mind was kind of blown because I was actually expecting Romney to go against Trump's nominee on this. I thought he was going to Jeff Flake the situation and say, no, we should wait until after the election. But even still, even if they took those three, that would have been a 50-50 tie in the Senate. Well, when there's a 50-50 tie in the Senate, guess who makes the final vote? That's the Vice President, Mike Pence. So it still would have gone through. That's why they needed to pressure 4 top Republicans into breaking ranks. Or 4 Republicans into breaking rank. But 4 wasn't going to happen. 3 was their prayer. Wasn't going to be enough. So we have the votes, and it's going to pass. And they need to just deal with it. And the fact of the matter is, when they were talking about, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, back in 2016, talking about Merrick Garland, she said, there is nothing in the Constitution that says the president stops being president in his last year. No, it doesn't. And Donald Trump is still the president. So, they were saying, well, let me continue with this article here because I'll go back to that in a minute. So, first, presidents want to stop the nomination, and Democrats want to stop the nomination, and they are considering taking unusual steps to bottle up all business in the Senate to drag out the proceedings as long as possible, senators said. Under the rules which require the chamber to operate by unanimous consent, Democrats can object to routine business of the day and essentially ground the chamber to a halt. McConnell could eventually get around such stall tactics if he has support of 51 senators. Now, that doesn't sound... It looks like they added in eventually to make it seem like the Democrats actually had a fighting chance in this. But it seems like McConnell has 51 senators right away. So I don't think it would take them very long to get around this. They just bring those 51 senators in, have the vote, and they go ahead. And if Democrats ultimately fail to stop the nominee, they're indicating that they may push legislation to expand the Supreme Court by adding additional seats to retaliate against what they view as Republicans' heavy-handed tactics. Of course, the Democrats view anything the Republicans do to actually represent their constituents who voted them into office is considered a dirty trick or a heavy-handed tactic. But the American people gave the Republicans the power they needed to push this through. Why should they not do that? Why should they sell out their constituents who voted them into office to be able to do this kind of thing? They shouldn't. They were also voted into office to have the power to block a nomination in 2016, and they did. As far as I'm concerned, Republicans are doing their job by doing the bidding of their constituents. And I already said in the video the other day that about 2/3 of the country agree to go ahead and vote. And it was even over 60%. I think it was 63% of Democrats even said, yes, we support having the vote. So who are the Democrats in office actually representing? It appears like they're only representing themselves and their own power. But what do you expect? So we have here also from the New York Post some of the top Democrats. So I already said a rising number of Democrats are speaking in favor of packing the Supreme Court as fears over the impending reality that the nation's highest bench will soon hold a considerable conservative majority. And, the Democrats, the left, they think that they have almost a God-anointed right to determine the course of this country. Now, of course, it's hard to say God-anointed because they're the ones who are taking God out of the Pledge of Allegiance. And you know that time when everybody mocked Joe Biden for saying, we hold it self-evident that all people are created and under God, and the thing. They acted like he forgot, but he actually started to say God and stopped himself because he realized that that's not the Democratic platform. You can't talk about God on the Democratic platform. But they still think that they are anointed by some sort of higher power, that it is that they have a divine right to rule this country, to determine the direction of this country, where we go. That's why they have subverted all of our institutions, because they want to control the culture. And then they want to control the politics. The left thinks that it is all on them. and that if the American people want to stop them, then it is the American people that are bad and wrong and need to be vilified, need to be called Nazis, racists, bigots, homophobes, all of that. And even in all of that, it's turned off the American people so much that it has backfired against Democrats. The narcissism that runs through the Democrat Party, through the liberal, left-wing ideological mentality, Americans are seeing through it now. They're seeing what these people really are, the power lust that they have. And anybody should be rightly scared of what they want to do with that power. Especially considering all the things that we've seen done over the course of the last 4 years by Democrats. I mean, there's blood on their fangs, just out for blood if they lose their power. That's not the American way. That is not what America is about. That is not what our republic was about. That is not the spirit of the Constitution. That is not the spirit of the American people who believe in the Constitution. So Mitch McConnell set the precedent. No Supreme Court vacancies filed in an election year. That was not the precedent. The precedent, see, this is what they're doing. They're taking the fact that Merrick Garland happened in an election year, that they blocked him in an election year and said, oh, that's it. That's all there was to it. That McConnell said no vacancy should be filled in an election year. That was not the argument. The argument was that Barack Obama was on his way out, could not be reelected, and the American people have given the Republicans the Senate power. And so they owed it to the people who voted them into office to do what they had been put there to do, and that was to put a check on Obama's lame duck presidency so that he couldn't ram through a bunch of final things in the last 4 years or I guess last 2 years, because I think they took back control of the Senate in 2014. Or did they already have it? I'm not sure, actually. I'm not sure what the makeup was before 2014, but I know they kept it in 2014, and the American people gave them the power, so they had every right to exercise it. Well, the American people also gave them the power in 2018 and 2016. So it's kind of crazy how the Democrats view this as just Republicans versus Democrats, and the American people are just spectators. That we're just spectators with no active role in this. Because that's how they think of us. That's how they think of us. Well, the Republicans actually understand the spirit of the electoral process and what their responsibility is to the people who put them in office. I mean, unless your name is Susan Collins or Lisa Murkowski, of course. But yeah, so they talk about that McConnell set the precedent. First of all, he didn't set that precedent. Actually, in 1988, Joe Biden himself pushed against the nomination of a Supreme Court justice in an election year. Because, of course, it was Democrats then. The Democrats will change their tune just because they'll flip-flop back and forth whenever it helps them and their power. It's so disingenuous. So disingenuous. At least the Republicans have a legitimate reason for why they're doing something different now than they did in 2016. The Democrats is just pure for us. So Mitch McConnell set the precedent. No Supreme Court vacancies filled in an election year. If he violates it, when the Democrats control the Senate in the next when the Democrats control the Senate in the next Congress, we must abolish the filibuster and expand the Supreme Court. They've already abolished the filibuster. That was what got them here in 2013. They abolished the filibuster and let a simple majority be all that was needed instead of a supermajority. But listen to what he says. When Democrats control the Senate in the next Congress. As if it's a foregone conclusion. So that tells you one of two things, or maybe two of two things. Maybe both of them are true. It's either that they know that that they've rigged the election, and that they're confident that they're going to steal it, or they are just so blindly narcissistic that they think it's a foregone conclusion that they're going to win. Now, I think it is a combination of both. I think that they know that the election is rigged, and they have rigged it. And they think they can rig it enough to take the Senate and take the presidency. So Markey's former Senate opponent, Joe Kelly, reiterated this argument, saying, If he holds the vote in 2020, we pack the court in 2021. It's that simple. Again, making the assumption that the American people are going to give them the power to do that. Obama era Attorney General Eric Holder, who's one of the most corrupt attorney generals we've ever had. You know, they like to scream about how Bill Barr is so corrupt. Bill Barr has done everything by the letter of the law. Eric Holder literally called himself Obama's wingman, and was I think he was the first AG ever held in contempt of court for withholding in the Fast and Furious scandal, covering up Obama. And I think that actually led to him having to leave office. You know, that was the thing about Obama. There were all of these scandals that he did, these corruptions. You know, whether it was the Fast and Furious, whether it was the the IRS scandal. They always had people to fall on grenades for him. And then he just said, "Oh, I'm just learning about that right now." Well, with all of the scandals that he partook in, or that happened under his administration, for him not to know about any of them meant that he was a bad president. You know? So Attorney General Eric Holder, who previously touted court packing as a possibility for Democrats during the 2019 Democratic primary, reignited the issue over the weekend while speaking at MSNBC. He said, "So I think that if, in fact, the Republicans are successful in placing a justice on the court, I think what the Democrats have to do, assuming Biden is president and that there is a Senate majority for the Democrats, at least he had the some shade of humility to say, assuming that, we need to think about court reform. And at a minimum, as part of that reform package, I think additional justices need to replace the Supreme Court." Now, those are weasel words, because he talks about it in reform. It doesn't need a reform. There is no reformation needed in terms of the number of people on the court. That's just them losing and saying, well, if we're going to lose, we're going to change the rules so we win again. Because they think they have some divine right to the American people, to the direction of the American country. Or up to the country. But they call it reform. Because that's what the left does. They use weasel words. That's not a reform. In fact, there needs to be a reform to prevent them from being able to do that. That is a corruption of the court, not a reformation of it. House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler took to Twitter Saturday to join the chorus of Democrats supporting the idea to increase the number of Supreme Justices. He says, "Filling the SCOTUS vacancy during a lame duck session after the American people have voted for new leadership is undemocratic and a clear violation of the public trust in elected officials." Well, guess what, Jerry Nadler? This is going through before the election. And just as Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, there's nothing in the Constitution that says the president stops being president in his last year. So up until the election, Donald Trump is still the president. And the Senate is still Republican. They were put in for that term. They get to serve it out until that last second ticks away. Because that was the will of the American people. So, yeah, it's going to happen. And they need to come to terms with that. I don't think there is anything that they can do to stop it. But, you know, for all their talk about the packing the Supreme Court, Ruth Bader Ginsburg calls packing the court a bad idea. And I couldn't find the video, but there was a video of her talking about it where she was saying that 9 is a good number. And the White House says, we believe Supreme Court seat can be filled in 37 days. So they can do this all before the election. So all of their arguments about lame duck sessions and all of that will be null and void. So buckle up, everybody, because we know that no matter what happens, they are going to make this a hellacious situation for America. They're going to, because Democrats have proven that they have no problem raining hell on the American people if it means they get to keep their power. And it's good to see under Donald Trump that all of a sudden the Republicans actually have a spine to fight back against this stuff. So good on them. Good on them. Let's make this happen. Let's make it happen before the election. How great would that be if it happens one day before the election? You know, I've seen a lot of jokes like what if Donald Trump nominates Merrick Garland? let's see if they then give Merrick Garland the Kavanaugh treatment, or if they nominate Christine Blasey Ford, how long until they come out and accuse her of falsely accusing Brett Kavanaugh. Of course, we wouldn't actually do that. That would be absolutely ridiculous, but I thought it was funny. Anyways, guys, that's the video. Go ahead and hit that like button if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Share this video. Let people know what's going on. Also, hit that notification bell so you know when I put out more videos. I have been putting out videos, multiple videos, 5 days a week. Also, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Parler at Ram Thorburn. I'm actually also on Minds now, too, and Pilled.net. They're smaller ones, but you can follow me at Ram Thorburn there as well. Also, I talked about how YouTube, I might not be long. Most conservative commentators on YouTube might not be long for YouTube, so I'm also on BitChute and Rumble at Ram Thorburn. So look me up on there as well. Follow me on there. And, yeah, there are links to my Subscribestar, Patreon, and PayPal down in the description below if you're interested in helping out this channel. So anyways, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.